Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, destiny serfs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. And that goes double for you people in South Korea. Well, it goes triple for you people in North Korea. I'm usefully welcome, and let's go to Korea. And what we have going on here is pretty dramatic, although it doesn't have much legs in the U.S. press overall, all things considered. But there's been millions of people out in the street protesting against the government, particularly the president of South Korea. And now the parliament has moved to impeach President Park Geun-hye. And I'm probably butchering that name as I often do. But anyway, interesting pedigree. I'll attach some articles below. But both her parents were victims of political assassinations, and her rise to power is really fascinating. And so now we have this corruption scandal in Korea, and it's going to be a long process. And they already are shifting power, and it's all over a very strange thing in some ways. She ran as an incorruptible candidate, which of course we've seen happen in a lot of countries, including the United States. The idea that candidate is incorruptible, but it turns out they're usually fairly corrupt. And if they aren't when they start, they sure are when they finish. But they talked about a constitutional and criminal violations, including embezzlement, bribery, abuse of power, and failure to protect people. And a lot of it had to do with a close confidant who was not in the government that President Park has relied on for quite a few years, decades in fact. And so now, because of the undue influence and the steering of contracts and that sort of thing, now there's this corruption there. And we see the usual things that we see in Korea. And that's one of the things that strikes me about this is, first of all, the relation to this and the events in Brazil, where they had millions of people in the street protesting against corruption in government. And so this seems to be a theme around the world. And then the fact that we've reached impeachment process in Brazil, and we all went all the way to the impeachment process. And we're going all the way to the impeachment process in South Korea. So we have a lot of elected governments that are changing hands all over Europe, and a lot of it is due to corruption as well. Although there's certainly a lot of factors involved in all these situations, but just the nature of government corruption is certainly involved. And people just getting to the point where they really don't want this anymore. But like I say, the similarities in Brazil and Korea are pretty interesting, and in the usual things, insider deals and nepotism and cronyism. And that's another theme we see in Korea, and why this is something worth looking at to me is just this continuous examples of governments all over the world that are the same. The cultures might be same, the language is different, the countries are different, but the elites seem to run the same the world over, and the people around the world that just want to get along probably are all very similar the world over. But like I say, cronyism and nepotism running rampant in Korea, much like it does in all the Western countries as well. And this is kind of interesting for South Korea. Of course, they've had a lot of political volatility in their government over the years, and they were a military dictatorship up until 1987. And another thing that's certainly interesting about the relationship between the United States and South Korea is one of our major partners in the East and in the world, a major ally and someone that we supply with weaponry, and we still have troops there, nuclear weapons, and it's a military dictatorship. So another one of those strange bedfellows for the United States, in spite of all our talks about wanting human rights, and we don't want to associate with all these nefarious rogue regimes that need to be taken down. Yet we have so many friends like South Korea who are a military dictatorship for a long time. So there we go. Interesting events in South Korea. There'll be a changeover in government, and probably end up with some form or another of another U.S. puppet government, but it could be a changeover in another direction. And as I brought up in a previous video about the pivot to Asia, the fabled pivot to Asia by the Obama administration and the political military machinery in the U.S. Moving to encircle China, a lot of these countries seem to be realigning, and there seems to be a crumbling. And in South Korea, we have the potential for a realignment there, depending on what happens with the rest of this scandal. But in the meantime, there we go, another government toppling, and just chalk it up to the times that we live in. I'm a useful idiot, don't you be one too.